Um, okay, so this is the Momentum System meeting for January 14th. One thing I wanted to say, I was like looking through sort of, you know, admin stuff this morning. Starting end of January, you're eligible to have your bonus half-hour coaching call. And if you've been using your tracker, then you also earn a milestone call, which is half an hour. So you can do an hour call if you want to. Um, that is an option. So basically, end of January, I'll send out a link and it'll be like, you can either do this, you can do that. You should send me by the end of the month or around the end of the month, like visual evidence of your tracking. And if you hit your other milestone, which was to do the things we talked about in your um, onboarding call, then you can also earn that milestone as well. Um, that one's always trickier, because it's dependent on luck in the world happening and so on. But um, so that's next. Ria was just saying we're like end of the month, I'm gonna start opening up my calendar for bonus coaching calls, milestone calls, whatever. So I will be in touch with you around the last week of January about that. All right, so that's what I got in terms of announcements. This is an open session, so who would like to start today? And the usual thing is, unless you have something specific, just let's talk about something good that happened this week and something that's been a challenge. Reed, you want to start this week?
I was going to suggest the same thing.
Okay. I'm
What's
I'm
happening with
so
your business, by the way? Now, like the last week, you were like, is it even real? And now what?
okay. Um yeah, I guess if you were gonna push me, I would still feel that. I'm still interested in the decluttering. What I'm realizing is I've done it once. I've had one client once,
Hmm.
just sort of by chance. A friend hired me to do that. And so for me to start this business, I kind of have to make it all up. Like
Hmm.
I have, and I don't mind doing that. It just means that it just feels squishy right now
Hmm.
until I have someone to work with. And so I mean, I understand, like I watched some Marie Kondo videos over the break, and I think that was useful just to, I mean, because everyone else will have seen them also, right? So
Hmm.
it's like she's the paradigm. Um, but the other thing I realized, I have one craniosacral client, this just marvelous young woman. It's just really fun to meet with her. And I realized like I do have that business, and it slammed shut when I broke my collarbone because I couldn't practice.
Hmm.
But it's not like that work. That work pays okay, and it's very nourishing. It's not like massage where you get worn out. And I think what I realized is that I do love that work and I can actually do both. And I already have a Cranio website. And so it's like I kind of need to be just in terms of like income, I like it's like I need to kind of be building the one off the other like that.
Hmm.
Um, and so part of what's going on in my brain is I realized my website is, it was like it's like a placeholder. I didn't have a lot of energy in it. I just needed to get something up. And my mind is actually thinking about how to rewrite parts of it or just use a new template and make it look kind of fresh and clean. As I continue to work on the decluttering thing, recognizing it's actually going to be a little slower than I thought
Hmm.
to launch. That said, I have a meeting with Jess later today to work on my offerings. And I've written them. Like there's a bunch of stuff I wrote. Um, and I have a couple of communities that I can do. Like I have like the friend community that I can do a soft letter to, but also my temple. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So uh, like I'm down. I just like I think also before I launch the decluttering. I want to have like some kind of rubric for myself. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I think that's smart. Like having some kind of process map. Here's what we do. So people are going to ask,
Yeah.
like, well, how does this work? And you're like, well, first we do this, then we do this, then we do that. It can be pretty loose,
Yeah.
but if you have some sense of what that is, and I think the one of the things we talked about is how, well, we've talked about this multiple times, the way that doing decluttering is like a therapeutic practice to a certain extent, and it's not cranio, but it's like
Oh, it's not to go
related to the energy of it.
totally. I mean, everybody feels better when their
Yeah.
space is organized
Yeah.
and we don't have stuff around. I
Yeah.
mean, stuff takes our attention. I'm aware of this, and I'm also capable of articulate. Sorry, I interrupted you. Oh, you're from the
Well, I
East
was just
Coast.
going to say, like, I think that the main thing that, the way that I teach business is through the MVP, just doing a thing, finding a
Yeah,
client and doing it. You've done it once, do it two or
yeah,
three more times, and you are absolutely a declutterer. You know what I mean? Like, you
right,
just,
right, right,
and so
right,
before you have a website, you have a warm letter. Like, you don't
right, right,
necessarily
right.
have this in like this formalized place. I mean, I think it's worth working on this with Jess and like having the words and whatever, but it's like the you're going to learn so much from doing this a few times and talking about it with people.
Yeah,
That's going to influence everything you do about your messaging and how you put this together. And it's also going to give you the confidence to be like in public, like, hey, I'm a declutterer. This is a thing I
right,
do.
right.
So that's why I'm always like, just go get a client. Just talk to somebody
Right. So the
who's,
warm letter, I mean, okay, I will work on my offerings with Jess because it helps me think through
yeah,
what
sure,
I'm
of course.
doing. Like, but the warm letter, I could just do that almost tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can send
Okay.
it to three people. You don't have to send it to like 100 people. You can send it to a few people who will be interested and empathetic, possible clients or people who might know clients. Like, start small. Just keep, obviously keep a checklist of who you've sent it to and what's going on with them. But like,
Yeah.
you can, there's a feeling like when you start a business, like I've got to start a business, like, and you have putting on a show or whatever. And that's not necessary. Like you can just kind of sneak in the side, try a couple things and then go from there, see what happens. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think part of, yeah, there's like, I do have a tendency to have like, oh, everyone I know is actually really competent with their stuff. And I do know a bunch of people who are competent with their stuff. Like they just take care of it. Um, and then yeah. And I have a psychiatrist. Anyway, she works with ADHD people and she's like, these are your people.
Hmm.
But that's like a whole specialty, the
Well, I feel
ADHD.
the same way, like I have many, many ADHD people and autistic people in my world, um, uh, who sign up for my programs and work with me and stuff, and I do not have any training in
Uh-huh.
that, you know.
Okay.
But I have a lifetime of experience with it through working with people and especially teaching, like I can remember the first student who told me they were autistic. Um, you know, gave me a letter like from them and their parents, like, this is what's going on and here's what you can expect. And it was like a really big revelation, a few years into
Huh.
my career.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's what's going on here. Now, she was very clearly autistic, and I'd worked with
Yeah.
other people who I looked back and like, oh, that person was autistic too, but like in a much quieter way. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
knows, right? I don't want to diagnose
Yeah.
anyone, but you realize that like that I did have skills for it and I had to pay attention to that, you know. So I think that what I want to say here is like, in terms of decluttering, I don't think you need to go out and get specific training for working with ADHD people, but you just need to understand. I do think you could read a book or two
Yeah.
about like
Yeah.
aimed at people with ADHD for organizing their life. Like, what do they recommend?
Yeah.
What are the things that, and ask your friend who is a therapist, she'll know the right
Yeah. Yeah.
books. and say
Yeah.
like, what are the sort of techniques that they recommend? You could incorporate those. If somebody
Right.
comes to you and is like, I need to organize, but I have ADHD, you go like, okay, here's some specific techniques that work for some people with ADHD. We could
Right.
incorporate these.
Right, right, right. Yeah. So that's actually useful, like where I notice like I have like, oh, I can't because I don't know. It just like actually that's an invitation to inform myself and find out whether that's like a chunk that's actually I can inform myself about. And therefore, and I think with
Yeah.
both ADHD and autism, I mean,
Yeah. I mean, you don't have
I'm
to be a
probably on the
medical practitioner.
spectrum. Yeah. What?
You don't have to be a medical practitioner for this to be, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's where I am. And also my creative work is happening, so in
excellent.
various ways. Um, so
Love it. Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, I'd love if this week you would send out a warm letter or two and see what happens, see
Okay.
what people say.
Okay.
Um, and the fact that you have friends who are really good at this is great. They can give you some feedback on how they do things or how it lands for them. But obviously they're not your customers. That's fine. I can guarantee you like 90% of the people would love to have an organizer, even if they don't need it.
Yeah. 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 Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Jennifer, I heard you there. Do you want to verbally check in case you need to leave for health reasons? You can leave your screen off if you want.
Um, yeah, thanks. No, I mean, I think I can do short periods of time. I just realized I need to it's like you get an allotment of the amount
Right.
of time to look at a screen, and I need to be judicious with that allotment. I actually don't have a whole lot to well, I don't know. I don't think I have a whole lot to check in on. My focus is more, I've had limited capacity, and so my focus right now is, at least this week, is on my professional life
Hmm.
more than my creative life. And it's all very connected to this. But it's kind of like seeing processes through that I've already set into motion rather than like creating the process right now. Um, so I'm not sure I have a whole lot to talk about. I mean,
Okay, well,
um,
that's fine. I think I mean,
Yeah.
just sort of validate your understanding that like when you see that you have limited capacity, making choices about what you're going to do with it is a really smart thing to do. Like, you know, like having a moment to go like, okay, this is the situation. What am I going to do? I think that's
yeah,
really smart.
yeah. And that's kind of what happened last week. I was like, oh, it's the first week back from break. I feel rested. And I did a bunch of creative stuff and tried to also do a bunch of work stuff, and it was just too much. And partly like there was flu in the household, so there was, but the factors are what they are, and it was too much. So I'm just reacting to that this week and simplifying, and yeah, it will be fine. But I am continuing with my tracker, and like things are plugging along, even though I'm not
Great.
creating new things in my creative life for this week.
That's great. Yeah,
Mhm.
good to hear. Jess, how about you?
Yeah, so based on my goals from last week, I did come up with a bunch of topics for my Substack on a bunch of ideas for posts for my Substack on the topic of personal branding.
Mm-hmm.
And actually got two of those articles written this week, scheduled for next week. And that felt good. Felt like I had something to say there. And yeah, we'll see where that goes. The Substack thing is so interesting because it's organically growing. People are signing up for it, like perfect strangers, which is wonderful. Perfect strangers are finding my Substack and signing up for it. And people are starting to mention it in notes and things, which it feels really good to have some traction there and have that kind of be my home for some of my
Yeah.
more my thinky stuff.
Yeah, well, you were talking about for, a couple of months, like trying to develop a lead magnet, need to develop this
Mhm.
email list, develop a lead magnet. This is a lead magnet.
Mhm.
Just the writing itself, just
Yeah.
the thoughts themselves, not the tool or the whatever. There's no kind of, um, there's no quid pro quo. It's like you sign up
Yeah.
for the thing because you like the thing. And the people then who are following you, and especially if they're engaging and making notes and so on, um, that is the list you want to be developing for this work. Like they're literally those people.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
great.
It feels good. It's like in my bones. It feels really good. It's a safe place for me to land my thinking and write in this particular way, and people are responding to it. Feels really good. Um, and the crossover between that audience and my Horizon Peak audience continues to be interesting because I continue to have people reaching out to me for thoughts on AI, which is not the thing I want to be known for, but unfortunately is the thing that I am known for. And it's because I've done a lot of research in that space and I have strong opinions about it. And I'm not anti-AI, but I'm also not pro-AI. So I can have these conversations.
Hmm.
But yeah, I was interviewed for a podcast last week on the topic of being human in writing in the age of AI. And that stirred a bunch of conversation on Substack. And anyway, it's such a weird thing.
It is a really weird thing, but I do think that because of like the people you want to be working with as coaching clients, and this is separate from Horizon Peak, the business side, but
Mm.
the people you want to be having these conversations with, they're going to be thinking about AI in terms of how do I use AI to um, increase my output of my thought leadership.
Yeah.
But the danger, of course, is that it becomes generic, right? Like that if they
Yeah.
don't use it properly, if they aren't, um,
It doesn't have their soul in it if they
right, if
don't
they don't like
approach
use
it
their own
thoughtfully.
material as the core material that they are AIing on, like
Yeah,
they are going to really end up with garbage.
exactly. And actually, this podcast interview it ended up being really good because I was able to articulate that. I was able to articulate, if you're going to use AI, here are specific ways I recommend that you use AI so your human soul remains in your writing.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm super excited
can
for
you
that
get a
episode to
copy
come
of
out.
the recording from the podcaster?
I'm sure I could. They're going to be putting the podcast out in a few weeks anyway, so I'll be able to, you know,
But if you
get the
get if you
public
get
version.
that, run it through AI and like, pull out
Yeah.
the quotes and stuff, pull out the specifics, write an article that goes along with it, and then link to the podcast.
Oh,
Like
for sure.
do that on Substack. Yeah.
I always write an article, and it's been on the Horizon Peak site because that's primarily where I'm doing the podcast interviews. I write a blog kind of recapping what we talked about and then linking out to the podcast. So that's already on the schedule. But yeah, I think that more articles are going to come out of that interview for my personal brand, which is
Yeah,
exciting.
because I think that, again, like people who are trying to create a personal brand, they're trying to be out there doing the thing and like showing what they are thinking about. They are going to be using AI. If they're tech
Mhm.
executives, they're going to be using it. So talking about how to stand out and also be able to make things more efficient with AI, putting those things together, that actually is also a differentiating factor for you.
Yeah, I think, yeah, there's a lot that's going to come out of this. So
Yeah.
that was exciting.
Bree, that's a great idea. Run it through AI the good way and the bad way and show the difference.
Seriously,
Yeah,
yeah,
that would be a funny one. That'd be good.
yeah. And I've done posts where I take really bad AI output and kind of break it down. And those tend to get some responses, which is always a good thing to get engagement.
But again, if this is your thought leadership, literally, this is
Yeah.
what you're doing is creating your personal brand and saying, like, here's what I did. Like I was
Mhm.
on this podcast and then I take this thing and I put it, and I'm like using AI to speed up the process of creating this post, this article. But if I just do this, you end up with this garbage. And so, like,
Mhm.
that's not going to help me at all. Like, it won't help you, won't help me. It just adds to the noise. But if I
Yeah.
do this, then da 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 da. Da. So like you have this whole kind of story to tell around that that could be really interesting and I think would get a lot of traction.
Yeah. I'm actually going to copy and paste Ree's note here into my notes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I
I
mean,
mean, I
that,
really think like I think that the initial stab at like helping people with writing like didn't really land in the way that you want it to. But I think partly because the like what are they writing and why are they writing wasn't there yet.
yeah,
And that's what seems to be coming out of this, conversation is like now you have like a thing they're trying to do. And if people have a mission, they have an outcome they want, which is now I have a personal brand, which is known for X. That is something that people will get engaged in and will spend time on, whereas sort of generally like, I just want to write more stuff, you
yeah,
know, they may kind of vaguely think that, but that's not going to get them spend investing the time and the money.
you're absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think I'm finding my way to the
Hmm.
right direction. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that I'm continuing to have these conversations. And honestly, that's another thing on my list of good things is my calendar is full of networking conversations. Unfortunately, not like sales conversations, but networking conversations with such a wide variety of people. And so many good things are coming out of these conversations. I'm getting so inspired, so many ideas. Um, I'm broadening my network. And it's funny because uh, up until now, I've really carefully managed my calendar. I can only handle, so many meetings in a day. I need at least one day a week where I have no calls, was just because they're exhausting for me.
Hmm.
But I'm not feeling exhausted with my calendar full. I've never had so many meetings on my calendar as I do right now, but they are all networking and no pressure and just getting to know each other. And at the end of the day, I'm not exhausted by that. So
Hmm.
it's really making me kind of think about the last few years and managing my energy and why I had to do that and what's the difference between then and now. And I think really good things are coming out of this really hard time for me. I'm learning so much about who I am, how I need to show up in the world, what people need from me, from the world. It's, man, it's still a really hard time. I still don't have any leads coming in. It sucks, but man, I'm learning so much. And that makes me feel really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the interesting thing is going to be how, like, I think that over the next few weeks, this will evolve into opportunities of various kinds, but they may not look like the ones you're looking for.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I'm staying open to it.
yeah. I mean, you gotta, right?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, well, sounds good.
Yeah.
At some point, I want you to walk us through your system for networking because it sounds really cool.
Yeah, I did create a system finally, and I should have done this forever ago. I did not prioritize business development nearly enough in the last 10 years. I did
Welcome
not
to
systematize
everyone's
it.
world. Like, who does?
But now I have a system, there are checklists. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I'd
and I'd
love
be
to see
happy to
what
share
you're
that
doing.
at any point. But I think
I,
this is
I want to
something I
I
can
want to
keep
see
up.
that.
Yeah. Well, we may have time today. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But let's Elizabeth, are you there? I haven't seen you yet. You're logged on, but haven't heard a word. So, well,
Ah,
oh, there
now
you
I had to do another thing to unmute.
are.
It didn't work the usual icon. Hi. I
Hi.
don't know why I've had technical difficulties today,
Okay.
but I'm here.
Great. So, what's happened with you in this last week?
It's been good and also really horrible. It's been a mixture. And so the good part is that I've set my goals. I'm still chugging along with trying to get this application in by tomorrow. Half of it's completely done. More than half, but there are a couple things, a couple loose ends. I was, I don't like this whole like ordering images, lining up 10 JPEGs, making sure the pixels are exactly the way they want them to be.
Mm,
So that's what I have to do
mm-hmm.
now. But I have the content. All the other content is pretty much done. Um, so
Yeah.
that means I'm working a lot of hours on it. And when I'm not working on that, I realize what it's doing. It's like giving me this intense focus.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, that's really helpful because the part that's so challenging and that takes away a lot of my capacity is, of course, my husband's the situation. And he's very, very sick now. Uh, so, it's kind of like this pressure of every hour I'm not there, or
Mm.
then I'm worrying about him and knowing what's going to happen pretty soon. Is that, yeah. So in that way, it's a very strange time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
My
I'm
heart
living in
goes
the
out to
now.
you.
I'm just trying to live in the now. And this application that I'm just going to send, no matter like how far it might not be perfect, but I'm going to send it. And it's not going to happen for another year.
Mm.
So I see it as a way of looking forward to something. And even if I don't get into this thing, I could reapply,
Mhm.
or I can use it for the residency that I really hope that I will go to. I mean, I doubt that my husband will live more than a couple of weeks.
Mm.
Uh, so maybe it's a good thing that I'm away in April. So eh, that's
Yeah.
about it.
It's really, really hard. And, my heart goes out to you. I think it's, the situation you've been in for so long is that you've had to figure out how to put your life together when the last phase isn't done,
Right.
and you just have to live with this sort of continuation of that while you're sort of at the same time figuring out who you are and what are you going to, do and how you're going to spend your time and all those things. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And the before and after. I mean, when you're in the now, it's like there is no before and after.
mm,
Yeah. But it's really helping me to do my little lists, and then when I don't have them, I get a little like, whoa, whoa,
yeah.
where's my little rubber stamp? Um, and I was thinking about what Ree was saying about the cleaning, helping people organize, and this whole thing of diagnosis. I mean, sometimes I think, God, I have ADHD, but I think these diagnostic criteria, they really are kind of more fluid
Mm,
because so many things can look like each other, and certainly the concentration problems cut across like post-traumatic stress and all kinds of
sure.
other reactions, or being in a life situation like mine, which messes with your sleep and everything else. Um, so I think there are a lot of people out there who could use that kind of help and who don't know how to even ask for it because if you're in a protracted situation of sort of barely like figuring out how to clean your house. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I can really empathize with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. Again, it's like how, part of your attention is always somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it needs to be. I mean, it's a good thing that it's somewhere else. It's just really hard, really painful.
Mm. And it's the same thing if you have kids that are not doing well, or it's like,
All the
yeah,
things. Yeah.
right. They're always on your mind, kind of like, okay, have they broken a leg today? Or like, what are they doing out there?
Yeah.
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 Mm.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I wish you the best of luck with this application.
Thanks.
And I think it's great to have something to focus on like this while you are going through this really intense phase with your husband. maybe this is too much, but it's like,
It's
it's
a little too much.
necessary.
I mean, I really need
But I would definitely think
to
like when you turn
relax.
this thing in tomorrow, I would look
Yep.
for something low intensity to keep your attention, like you work on your
Yes.
creative work, or have a daily
Yep.
check-in, or do something so you're still anchoring to yourself and your own sort of generative work
Mm.
while this is going on in a way that's
Yeah.
flexible
Yeah.
so you can be there for him. But yeah,
Yeah. What was that? Dudane's? I didn't see it. Dudane's what?
do saunas.
Oh, yes, in a big, big way. We are the big, not quite as much as the Finnish. They can outdo
They
anybody
can
in the
out
sauna
sauna anybody.
department. They're experts.
Yeah.
I heard this was a kind of a Scandinavian joke, but I think it's true that there were some Finnish people who were working in Addis Ababa and they, which of course is very, very hot, and they made a sauna. It's like they made a community building and they built a sauna. It's like they're crazy.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of overheating myself, so
Yeah.
um, yeah,
You've lived in Addis. Okay.
it gets pretty
Oh,
cold. Okay, because the
oh, well, there
desert,
you go.
I
Well,
guess.
okay. Ah, that
It
makes
gets
sense then.
surprisingly cold in winter. Yeah, it's like I mean, it's not Scandinavian cold, but it's quite chilly. So
Ah, so maybe it does
not
make
an
more
Morty,
English
who
sense.
knew?
bodybuilders.
Yeah. Well,
Lived in
sorry,
Addis.
I'll
Wow,
spare you the jokes, the
pretty cool.
Finnish jokes. We have now. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that wraps up check-ins. Jess, do you want to show us your system? Like, let me
Yeah, I can
allow
do
sharing
that.
screen.
All right. Can you guys see my Notion okay?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, so I built myself a dashboard here, and then I have tasks in my task management system that prompt me right now on a daily basis to come in here. But when things settle down and I don't have to be doing this as frequently as I'm doing it right now, the task will be probably weekly or biweekly. But I built this dashboard and I have this daily action tracker. This is filtered to this week, but you can see I've been
Mm-hmm.
doing it every day. And these keep me on track for what I'm doing. Um, we open this up, I've got all of the tasks that for me count toward business development. And that is, posting on social for awareness, posting for trust, following up. You'll see in a minute, a database of people that I am trying to, nurture the relationship. Strategic commenting. There's a couple of, again, you'll see this places I go on LinkedIn to strategically comment on people's posts. Targeted outreach. Again, this is that list of people, like warm contacts that I'm nurturing. Cold outreach. These are people that I don't know, that don't know me yet on LinkedIn, that I am sending connection requests to or DMs to. And then I have another database where I'm keeping track of all of those.
And you did a bunch of research to figure out who those people should be.
Yep. And you'll see further down on this page here in just a minute, kind of how I'm tracking all of that. And then I'm a member of several Slack communities, so I check it off if I go through my Slack communities and I look at specific channels for specific things. I can check that off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my daily action tracker. These are the tasks that I'm trying to do on a daily basis for business development. But then I am managing a lot of that data here below as well. So my pipeline tracking in Airtable, this is just an Airtable embed here. If it'll show up. Come on. Try to refresh. Sometimes Airtable needs a little kick in the pants. There we go. So I have all this data in Airtable. It's connected to some other systems in Airtable. That's why I keep it there. So as people become clients, then I move them over to the client side of my Airtable. But this just helps me keep track of where the conversations are in time
Mm-hmm.
and who I need to reach out to. I have triggers, remind me to connect on a certain date.
Mm-hmm.
That'll trigger an email to me that day to follow up with them. And I'm just tracking my warm connections. These are previous clients or referral partners, people who know me, who've worked with me, who know of my work at least, who I am trying to maintain the relationship with. And then I have my cold outreach database here. And these are new people who are entering my world because I'm reaching out to them on LinkedIn. I'm just sending connection requests with no note, just sending the connection request cold and marking them here. And then I have reminders to follow up, 5 or so days out. And I'm checking to see if they accepted my connection request. And if they didn't, did they look at my profile? Have they been active on LinkedIn? And just kind of making thoughtful decisions about how I want to move forward with these people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I kind of
So if you look
have
at
my
them and
little
they
process
haven't
here.
checked out, or they looked at your profile and they haven't accepted or whatever, then you're like,
They're not interested. I'm just going to let them
mm-hmm.
go, and I mark them archived.
Got it.
Or if they haven't been active on LinkedIn since I sent that request, I'll flag them as give them more time.
And
And
once
I'm
they
sure,
accept you, then you reach out and with a DM.
yeah, that's the plan. Is once they've accepted, again, I give them a few days, so it's not like I'm springing a sales message on them. But my plan is, this is a pretty new part of my process, but my plan is to send them a message that's kind of like this was from a program that I joined.
Mm-hmm.
Something very light touch
Mm-hmm.
that is not a super salesy message. And like I said, I wait a few days after they accept, but I'm trying to be thoughtful and human about my cold outreach approach.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just how I'm tracking that.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then I've got, my editorial calendar, so I know what I'm posting, where and when. So if, that's part of my checklist in the daily action tracker is, did I post anything today? I can refer to that very quickly here. This is why I love Notion, is I can just embed things everywhere. And
Mhm. Is this the actual content or is this just a calendar?
this actually has the content in it.
Oh,
Yep.
cool.
I live in Notion. I track everything here.
Yeah, me too. Just differently. Everybody does it differently, so it's always
Mm.
interesting.
And then LinkedIn lists have been really key for me. Strategic commenting has been really good for just getting on certain people's radars. And I've only learned this recently, and I wish I had known this years ago, but you can almost create these saved lists of people in LinkedIn using this hack, where if you go and you do a search in LinkedIn, you use all the filters that you want to use to find a certain segment of people, and you sort that by last post date or whatever. And you just copy that URL, that's like a saved list.
Hmm.
So I can go in, I have all these different lists for different reasons. For example, my old clients, existing or previous clients are all here in this list. And I can just quickly go through and see if anybody's posted anything that I want to comment on.
Mm.
And it makes that strategic commenting so much easier.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. But it all lives here in this dashboard, and I have my daily tracker checklist, and it makes things so much more systematic and just easier to go through and do each day. And the end point is critical for me. What I was finding, since business development is pretty much all I'm doing right now, is there was never an end point. At the end of the day, I would feel like I got nothing done
Mm-hmm.
and just like a swirl, you know? And having this tracker, I'm checking things off as I go. And at the end of the day, it feels like I did something and there was an endpoint to it. So this has been a game changer for me with my mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been doing this
Probably
for,
doing more stuff because you are being very specific about what those things are.
yeah, it feels less swirly
Mm-hmm.
and a lot more just process. And you can see I've only been doing this for a couple of weeks, but it has completely changed how I feel at the end of the day.
Great. Love it. Thanks for sharing that. That was really
Sure.
super helpful.
Hopefully it's interesting and you got some ideas for
Yeah.
yourself.
I mean, we all need to up our game in networking and whatever that looks like, whatever platform that is, whatever, style it is. Like I've done Michelle Warner's Networking That Pays course, which I recommend, by the way. Um, it's really good. And she has this like very specific like way of determining like how many contacts you should be maintaining and like what the it's just like a 5-day system for like what are the like little things you can do over 5 days to just kind of keep everything rolling, keep it going, which is nice for like when you're maintaining. But this sort of like you like get full in, that's a whole
Mm-hmm.
other deal.
Yeah, yeah. And you saw that I have some of the data in Airtable, and that was kind of scrambling me too because I have so much data in Airtable for specific kinds of data tracking, but then you see how much I track in Notion too.
Yeah.
And eh, I'm because this is literally all I'm doing, I'm able to sit and think about how I actually want this to work going forward. And I'm not just piecing things together. I'm actually able to think very strategically and thoughtfully about how this is going to look in maintenance mode.
Hmm.
And again, this is just a blessing of this really hard time,
Yeah.
is I'm finally building something that I can maintain strategically over time and hopefully never find myself in this position again.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. I think that's really building resilience,
Yeah,
excellent.
Can I ask some questions?
of course.
Well, first of all, I'm curious what you use Airtable for and how you have what data you have in there. Because I don't know, I just have some curiosity. It's like I kind of want to use it for different things and I haven't really dived in totally. Um, and I'm also curious if you want to teach this to anyone, because I can think of at least one person that I work with that could really benefit from this and might really appreciate you advising her on setting up something like this, if that's
Oh,
something you're
cool.
interested in. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't promise, but I know someone who needs this and knows she needs it.
They need the like pipeline management, business development kind of
I would say
system or just a system.
the thoughtful network and contact management system. Um, kind of bringing it out of something that's organic and just part of the flow of everyday life into something that is a little bit systematized on a computer, which I saw in what you just shared with us.
Yeah.
I want to work towards that for myself, but I'm not there at all, and I don't need to be right now. So anyway, just throwing it out there if
Cool.
that's of interest to you.
Yeah, I love my systems. I really do. And to answer your question about Airtable, I was using Airtable before I was using Notion actually. So some of it just continued to live there. But what I was tracking in Airtable, and less so now. So it has me questioning some things. But I was tracking, which individuals I was putting on projects. I was tracking how much time was being spent on the projects, by whom, what the breakdown of time was. Um, not for the purpose of correcting my team. I have a great team.
Mhm.
It was for the purpose of figuring out if a client was profitable for me.
Mhm. Yep.
So I have all this data in Airtable that very quickly tells me if a client is profitable or costing me money to continue working with. And for
Yeah.
me, I never had so many clients that I had to worry about that a lot. It was always, a handful of high paying clients. That's how I like to work. But it helps me to set boundaries, to know what's profitable and what's not. And it also kind of kicks me in the pants sometimes when I know I should let a certain client go, but I really love them. Or, whatever it is, I want to continue working with them, to have the numbers right in front of me saying, this is costing you money
Mhm.
to work with this person or do this kind of project, that I need that impetus to make those hard decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
that's
in
the
some
kind of
ways,
data.
it probably you're almost using it like a spreadsheet in that kind of like you could have done
Yeah.
that in a spreadsheet, but Airtable is a little bit more robust.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, there are certain formulas that I can only do in Airtable that are really not possible in Notion. And so I track a lot of stuff in Notion, but then once somebody becomes a client and I'm working on a project with them, then I start tracking some data in Airtable to keep track of that stuff over time. But
Cool. Thanks for
I have
sharing.
not, yeah, I have not been using it nearly enough. And a lot of it is just, I haven't had a lot of clients for the last couple of years. It's been a, really small set of clients. And my team is amazing. So I don't have to track a ton of things with them. So now I'm kind of questioning, do I want to keep, I love data. I love
Mhm.
data, but do I need to track all of this? I don't know. I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the profitability tracking sounds very valuable no matter what, but the thing I love data too, and I love tracking stuff, but like the thing that I figured out at some point was like if I'm tracking something and I have no intention of taking action on it, I should not be tracking that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, it does help me make some hard decisions, but
Yeah. I
the
mean, I was
last
tracking
two
all this stuff
years,
with like conversion rates on like sales pages and things, and I'm like, but I'm not going to get in there and like use Hotjar to figure out which section and, optimize for like another 0.025% of whatever. Like it's not, my volume is so low that that would make no difference in my life. You
yeah.
know, if it was a high volume business, then it would be different. But, I realized that was a big breakthrough for me, realizing like, unless you have a high volume business, that kind of like
Yeah.
conversion optimization stuff is mostly a waste of time.
Yeah. I think that's such a differentiator that people are not, either they're not aware of or they're not talking about, is that if you have a high volume business, you have to operate differently than if you have a low volume, high, high,
I ticket.
whatever, high ticket
Yeah.
business. Like mine is low volume, high ticket. I work with clients that have big budgets and I
Yeah.
work with very few of them. It's a
Yeah.
totally different model than those high
Yeah, and
volume.
realistically, like it's the only model that works well for micro businesses.
Mm,
Like if the smaller your business is, the more that is required in order to have a human life.
yeah.
Because you just can't like the ways that a large volume business has to function
Mhm.
to do well require tons of people, time, and the margins are razor thin. So, you need to have a much larger business. If you have a small business, you can't afford it.
Yeah. Well, it makes me look at engagement on social media differently too. That's been a conversation a lot about, is this working on this platform? Is this working on that platform? And people look at likes and comments and reposts to judge whether something is working. For me, it's the DMs or the emails.
Yeah.
That's how I know something is hitting home, is I start getting emails, I start getting DMs
Uh-huh.
from my posts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people aren't talking about that kind of engagement on social, but that's how a low volume, high
Well, it's
ticket
the.
business
This is like
shows
my
engagement.
thought leadership. This is my topic, is like this thing of like what, the things that the platforms want us to do, feed the platforms. They don't help
Yeah.
you. like getting lots of engagement and likes and, people commenting on your posts or whatever, that keeps people on the platform and that's all they care about. And so that's what they're promoting.
Yep. But this is the benefit of being thoughtful about our businesses, right? So we
Yeah.
know to be
Yeah.
tracking the things that matter.
Yeah. And there's always a little slop, but it's okay. Yeah. Well, that was really valuable. Thank you, Jess. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
All right. Everybody have a top 3 for the week?
Let's see. Do I have a top 3 for the week?
A top 1 is fine.
I think I'm going to keep my top 3 and keep working my top 3 from last week, which is I actually did move the topic ideation system into a it's not a 1-pager, but close. I can show that to you guys next week. So just continue making sure that's refined, coming up with more Substack posts. Got the topics. Now I need to do more writing. And then my Wednesday, Thursday night creative habit.
Excellent. Bree, how about you?
At least draft a warm letter. And then sort of like a sub of that is come up with a list of where I'm going to send it, like who I'll share it with.
Mm-hmm.
And also figure out who can read my warm letter, like just to make sure the tone's okay. Yeah, I mean, the other things are like I have 2 creative projects going and they're just keep going, basically.
Yeah.
I think there's the low bar open mic that I'm going to sign up for, which is I'm going to perform in public. So we'll see how that goes.
Cool.
Um,
Look forward to
yeah.
hearing about that one.
Me too. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool. Jennifer, how about you?
It's really some of these work milestones. I have to get some SOPs out the door for one of my jobs, which is just coincidentally related to what we're doing here. And then I'm in a process of pivoting my position with another job, and there's a lot of thought work that goes into that. So that's really my top 1, and everything else is just like keep myself as healthy as possible as I navigate that and let it be a quieter week for creativity and everything.
Yeah, well, that's a goal, right? Make it a
Yeah.
quieter week.
Exactly.
Great.
But I will I'm so energized by the business development stuff because part of my pivoting is also like stepping back with some things. So I'm like, it's like knocking on the door of my consciousness. Like once some of this stuff is out of the way, that's hopefully going to move up. So I'm having fun with.
Schedule another call with me if you want to talk about, what I showed you, and we can talk about your friend who needs that kind of help too. And maybe we can
Cool.
both solidify our thinking.
That sounds lovely. I'll reach out once I've passed these milestones and have a little more space.
I'm so sorry, guys. I have to jump to another call. So I'm going to
Yep.
say
See you next
goodbye.
time. Bye. Elizabeth, how about you?
Okay. As I said, I'm sending this application tomorrow, and then
Mhm.
that's a big milestone. And then getting back to some daily practice with my sketchbook in
Perfect.
terms of creativity. Other than that, I have just a need for some social time and planning a few small getaways and appointments and things like that for my health and well-being.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's it.
Sounds great. I love it. All right. I will see everybody next week and
Yeah.
hope you have a great week.
You too.
Bye.
You too. Thank you. Bye.